Let's check this out. If you haven't already, check out Sci Man Dan. He does a lot of flat Earth debunk stuff. He's pretty entertaining, and he has the knowledge base to actually, you know, debunk stuff better than I do. That's for sure.
Nothing funny about the tools of capitalism.
Dude spanking dudes. Oh hey Jake, what's going on? What time am I ending? Probably around 8:30 or so. We had that kind of thing happening in my high school in the 90s. It was meningitis, and it paralyzed one guy and killed a girl, and 3 others got real sick. You know. Anyway, yeah, Sci Man Dan. Good YouTuber. Check him out. And this is apparently going to call him a lying NASA shill because he understands that the Earth isn't flat.
So, I got a few hundred more nasty comments from the Sci Man Dan cult yesterday, and so it didn't take long to realize that he made another video about me. How Sci Man Dan's hired propaganda army works is beyond me, but it's certainly organized, but it doesn't really bother me.
They're not hired. He's just a popular YouTuber because he's funny and he makes fun of globe buster type people. Like, you people are ridiculous. It's entertaining. I've watched basically his entire Flat Earth debunk playlist just because it's really interesting to hear what you people have to say, and if someone who actually understands science debunk it.
Maybe I'll try to address a few more of Sci Man Dan's arguments on the globebusters, if others think it's interesting, but I at least wanted to address a couple of Sci Man Dan's claims. Yes, all of his arguments were silly, but unlike Sci Man Dan, I don't get a penny for my videos. I don't have any merchandise to sell. I have a career and a family to take care of.
Sci Man Dan also has a career. I'm pretty sure he owns a company that does tutoring. So he does the internet stuff, and he makes money on that. I'd imagine he has a decent number of subscribers, and he gets good views on his videos. But he also has a business that does well.
And so I don't have all day to make a video response to address all of his nonsense. So let's start with this one. One other thing. Notice that there is no thrust from the nozzle. Yes, there should have been a huge flame and obvious lights.
Hey, bud, here's the thing about space. There's no oxygen in it. And you know what you need for sustained flame in space? Some kind of fuel. That's why the space shuttle, for instance, or any rocketry, will typically include, like, liquid oxygen so that it can help burn, right? Because there's none in space. Did you see the explosion there that was like, and it made it shoot upwards? That was the thrust. They're on the moon, which has relatively low gravity, so they don't need this giant jet of flame coming out. Otherwise, they'd way overshoot the module that they have to link up with in orbit of the moon in order to get back to Earth.
Source from the nozzle.
No, there shouldn't. Here is a short clip from the Vintage Space YouTube channel telling us why.
But the lunar module didn't burn the same combination of fuel and oxidizer. Instead, it used hypergolic fuels, or hypergols. Hypergols burn on contact. They don't need an ignition source, which means all you have to do is open a valve, let the two mix, and boom, you're off. Which is great with spaceflight because that's one less thing to worry about. Another characteristic of hypergols is that they typically burn clear. This is the case of the lunar module. Both the lunar module ascent stage and descent stage used a mix of aerosine 50 and dinitrogen tetroxide, a fuel and an oxidizer that burn on contact with a character.
I love her hair color. This has nothing to do with science. But someday I'd love to dye my hair that color.
Characteristic clear flame.
I do have to commend NASA for using a beautiful propagandist.
Dude, just address the claim. Don't be a fucking creep.
It's a wonderful change from Sci Man Dan, and it's strangely makes me want to conform. But I guess the truth is more important to me.
Hey, globebuster guy. Maybe stop being horny on Maine for a second and try and actually explain away the actual science that was just explained to you.
Even though she's hot, she isn't telling you the truth. I didn't think that was possible. Anyways, did you notice that she used the words clear flame?
Yes, clear flame exists. It exists on Earth, too. Check this out. Invisible fire. So invisible fire is a thing that can happen. It's happened during NASCAR events because something about the fuel that they use. Thank you to Power Gloves for Power Hugs. Thank you for following. Cool name. during NASCAR events, I think it has to do with the kind of fuel they use. There's like a fuel spill sometimes, and it'll light on fire, but the fire is invisible. Like they're on fire right now.
This is a fire you cannot see. It's an alcohol fire. Both Rick Mears and his chief mechanic are alight. You cannot see it, but they are engulfed in flames. The difficulty for the marshals is that they cannot see the flames, and here they try desperately to put the flames out. Mears grabs the extinguisher to douse himself, and there the mechanic is leaping up and down. He's burning, and they...
Frankly, this makes the Talladega Nights scene, I think, a lot funnier, because he may have actually been on fire.
cannot see it. The marshal's dilemma is that this fire is not visible. To compound the problem, behind Mears is a tank containing 200 gallons of highly inflammable fuel. We still see the marshals...
You know what I hate? I hate that the term flammable and inflammable mean the same thing. Stop it.
Put out the flames on the chief mechanic. They cannot see these flames. It really is a terrible problem. They submerged the car in extinguishant, and we shan't know.
So we get it. Basically, invisible fire is a real thing.
For comparison purposes, this is a clear flame produced by burning alcohol. You can still see the flame, but it is rather invisible. So, the question is whether the hypergolic fuel mix...
You could literally see when that... Hold on, let me see if I can pause it at the right time.
So, the question is...
The reason that you could see the flame when you put the paper in is because the paper... See, you can't see it in the glass. But when you see it right here, it's specifically because it starts the paper burning, and the paper burning is not a clear flame. So you have to be looking in the glass, where it is in fact invisible. I think this guy saw this and went, "It's not invisible, look, you can see it." Well, that's because he was just using the paper to demonstrate that the glass is on fire, right? Once it gets on the paper, it starts burning the carbon in the paper, and it's a visible flame.
Rather invisible. So, the question is whether the...
You can literally see it right here. You can see the thrust being produced by whatever system it is.
Hypergolic fuel mixture of the Apollo 15 and Apollo 17 ascent stages would have burned clear, and thus mostly invisible.
Again, you can literally see the thrust being produced. It's right here. You guys see this, right? Like, how are globebusters looking at this and going, "I don't see anything"? It's right there. It's right there.
From the remote-controlled camera on the moon, operated 234,000 miles away. To her credit, she was right about the alleged fuel used by the lunar lander movie prop.
Alleged fuel? You mean the fuel?
It was an alleged mixture of dinitrogen tetroxide and Aerozine 50.
I feel like if you were asked what either of those things are, you wouldn't be able to explain it. Now, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't either. But I also understand that the engineers at NASA do know what that is, and that it's real. The fact that you could pronounce certain words and can put the word allegedly in front of them doesn't delegitimize the actual science being done by people at NASA.
It sounds so impressive. But is the flame from the hypergolic propellant invisible, as she claimed? This video comes from the School of Chemistry at the University of Nottingham, where they recreated the chemical reaction that allowed astronauts to blast free from the moon's gravity.
This type of chemical reaction, a hypergolic chemical reaction, was the...
You understand that the reaction in a vacuum is probably going to look different than the reaction here on Earth, right? They're doing it to show, like, hey, this same mixture can work here, and they're just trying to recreate it. But it might look different.
Rocket fuel used.
Because we're not in a vacuum on Earth.
In the Apollo program. So as you can see, one of our workshop technicians many years ago has made here at the University of Nottingham's own Apollo spacecraft. And essentially there's a rocket motor and a jet. And opening the switch.
Wait, which one is this? Are they trying to use the fuel that launched the rocket initially, or the one that made the lunar lander go up? Because the flame when the Apollo mission started was not invisible, right? So are they trying to recreate the initial launch, or are they doing the lunar lander ascent back up to the module that they have to reconnect with and then get back to Earth? Because this looks more like the initial first stages of the rocket when it's trying to get out of the Earth's atmosphere, which is a different process than the one they used when the lander went back up to the module and met with it, right? Those are different kinds of reactions. Because they didn't make this look like a lunar like, they didn't make this look like the lander. They made this look like the rocket when it first took off, which makes me think this is just like the chemical reaction that was done in the initial takeoff, which is different. So I think you completely misunderstood this experiment.
Do I really have to point out the obvious here?
I would imagine if it is the one that's on the lander, it has to do with the atmosphere, right?
Does anyone else see the problem?
Me?
Thank you, Sci Man Dan.
Oh, good.
You finally got an answer right. But I'm sure you're about to claim that the School of Chemistry at the University of Nottingham must have got NASA's method wrong. Well, fortunately, here's another professor.
It's burning the prop. That's why you think? Maybe.
In chemistry.
So we call
A hypergolic fuel can also cause the air to burn, producing flames, which would make sense considering we have an atmosphere on Earth, and we don't have one on the moon. So on the moon, it would remain invisible because it's not burning any of the surrounding oxygen or any of the stuff in the atmosphere, whereas here on Earth, it is.
it dinitrogen tetroxide. Now we come to the part where we're actually going to put in the fuel. Dimethylhydrazine, which is actually one of the key components of a mixture called Aerozine 50, which NASA have used for a very long time to power some of their rockets. Because it gets very hot, it glows so brightly and produces a big brown plume. But my God, this is impressive.
Just in case you missed it, let's hear that one more time.
Because it gets very hot, it glows so brightly and produces a big brown plume.
This isn't in a vacuum chamber. Put it in a vacuum chamber and see what it does.
Both the lunar module ascent stage and descent stage used a mix of Aerozine 50 and dinitrogen tetroxide, a fuel and an oxidizer that burn on contact with a characteristic clear flame. Clear flame.
And produces a big brown plume.
Clear.
One is on Earth, where there is an atmosphere, and one is in space, where there is not one.
Flame.
Think you need to get your eyes fixed or glasses because you're lying through your teeth.
How well does the Apollo footage match actual experimentation?
God, they need to redo that experiment in a vacuum chamber to shut these fuckers up. The plume is also not a flame, it's a reaction product. Oh.
Yes, there should have been a huge flame and obvious light source from the nozzle.
No?
No, there shouldn't.
Who thinks Sci Man Dan is lying to you?
Me?
Thank you, Sci Man Dan. For the next argument, I'm just going to play Sci Man Dan's video. It's that bad. You can clearly see the use of 1960s movie artificial backdrops here. It's obvious.
Is it?
The backdrop lines are visible throughout all the missions.
Are they?
In this case, you can even see the carpet used to blend in with the backdrop.
No! No! You think this makes you look good and Sci Man Dan look bad?
No reasonable person can deny that these are movie backdrops.
They're not!
This was not filmed on the moon.
Poor exhibit. It seems like you're just saying it's a backdrop without any evidence.
Don't worry, Skrull. Now there are plenty of tards out there living really kick-ass lives.
I can't help the willfully blind, but I think any
Do you understand how you can have a surface, and then once behind the surface there's an increase in elevation, it can appear that there's like a horizon that's sort of a cutoff point. It's because there's a hill there.
Reasonable, decent.
It's a hill that ducks down and then goes up, but because you're standing over here, you only see a sudden cutoff. You don't see the valley there.
Human being can see that this is a poor 1960s movie backdrop, and no goofy propaganda sellout is going to change that fact.
It's not. Dude, again, what's happening here is you have a little bit of an up, and then a valley, and then it's starting to go up again, and because you can't see through the surface, it's not translucent, all you see is what looks like a drop-off because you're seeing the peak of that elevation disguise the valley part because you can't see it. Do you understand how perspective works? Jesus Christ, these people are idiots.